Hey folks, Eddie from Brain Pulp TV, and I am back with more Magic the Gathering Online. Today, we're going to be starting a 5-match competitive Eternal Masters League. Now, in the past, I've done leagues for both Shadows over Innistrad as well as the Battle for Zendikar block. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with what a sealed league is, you have 6 packs of cards, and those packs get opened up. You use the cards from those 6 packs, and only from those 6 packs, not including basic land, of course, to create your deck for the league. Now, for a 5-match competitive league, the magic number is to get 3 wins. If you get 3 wins, you're in the prizes. 4 and 5, obviously you get more prizes, but you need at least 3. As well, unlike with a draft, you get to play each of these matches whenever you want, so you can take until the close of the draft, which for this one, I believe, is sometime in July, so I've got quite a while to play all of these matches. However, I will be playing all of the matches, or most of the matches, this week, and any of the remaining ones will be done next week. Now, there was a comment before about how sometimes it can take you as a viewer out of the frame of mind for the event that I'm in if I do the draft in one video and then you have to wait, a day or two for the following matches. And I completely agree with that. I 100% completely agree with that. With the league, though, one of the reasons why I'm doing the league is because I'm a bit cramped for time right now. And 2, it allows me to open up the packs, build a deck, play a couple games, sort of get used to the deck, and then I can have some time for you guys, if you want, to give me feedback and let me know what you think is working, maybe if there's some other cards that you see in the card pool that I'm not using that I should be using, that sort of thing. So my plan is right now to create the deck in one video and then do 2 videos of matches. Hopefully those will all be released on the same day. Then the final 3 matches of the league, I will be releasing the following Monday. That will give you time to see the deck that I've built, the first couple matches that I've played, and then maybe have a chance to think about what I could be doing to improve it. And if you want to sound off on it, you can always sound off in the comment section below. Not that commenting is required. You guys can just as easily sit back and enjoy the matches, because hopefully they will be somewhat enjoyable. Then, once I am done the league, I will be doing at least one Eternal Masters draft, and then probably, because unless I start, winning packs or player points enough to keep going and going, I will probably stop because it can get a bit expensive to draft Eternal Masters. Anyways, without further ado, let's get to the league, open up our packs, and see what we have to play with. Okay, first and foremost, let's see what we're dealing with as far as rarity goes. We have... Okay... This is really good. We have Force of Will, which means that we're pretty much made back about half of the cost of the draft already through Force of Will. Unfortunately, like I'm sure a lot of you know, but for those of you who don't, cards in Magic Online rarely cost as much in tickets as they would in dollars in paper Magic. So Force of Will is a very, very nice card to open up in paper Magic. It's still okay to open up in Magic Online. I think Force of Will and Wasteland would be the 2 most expensive rares or mythics to open up in Eternal Masters. But even then, we're talking about it capping off at around, I think, 20 tickets, somewhere around there. I could be wrong. It might be a little bit higher, might be a little bit lower. But still, it's nice to get a card like this right off the bat because it means you're going to get part of your investment right away back, even without playing any of the matches. Okay, other than Force of Will, we have Vampiric Tutor as another mythic, which is quite nice to open up as well, too. We have Deathrite Shaman, Duplicant. What else here? Glare of Subdual. Not the best. And Green Sun Zenith, which is actually a nice rare as well, too. So search your library for a green creature card with converted mana cost X or less. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Shuffle Green Sun Zenith into its owner's library. So right now we have some serious tutor action that we can be doing here. If we wanted to go green-black, Vampiric Tutor, Green Sun Zenith, as well as having a Deathrite Shaman, which will work with both of those colors. So based on the rares and mythics alone, it looks like a green-black build may not be a bad idea. That said, let's see what we have in the rest of the colors. So we're going to sort by color here. In white, Benevolent Bodyguard, Swords to Plowshares, very, 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 very good card. Intangible Virtue, also a very, very good card. Mistral Charger, Raise the Alarm is solid. Seal of Cleansing, Wall of Omens, Ballinok Cohort. Got 3 of those. Mesa Enchantress, Coalition Honor Guard, which I also like. Honden of Cleansing Fire. Now, not the best of the shrines to have, but who knows. Glimmerpoint Stag, Second Thoughts, which is nice removal as well, and Welkin Guide. It's flying. When it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains flying to the end of turn. So that's a pretty decent white card as well too. Let's see what we have in the way of blue. We have Dream Twist, Silent Departure, Daze. I love Daze. We got 2 Memory Lapse. We got Merfolk Looter, Counterspell, very excellent card to get. Gaseous Form, 2 of those. Una's Grace. We don't have a lot of variety because we're getting a lot of doubles in our blue. So Una's Grace. What else do we have here? Warden of Evos Isle. Flying creature spells with flying. You cost 1 less to cast. I mean, that could be good for a obviously like a flyer strategy. Deep Analysis, which I like. Phantom Monster. Peregrine Drake, Force of Will, which we saw before, which I'm super happy to get, and Jetting Glass Kite. So this is another card that I quite like. I mean, we do have some decent blue. I really like counterspells, so having just, the straight up counterspell, which is great, and then Force of Will, which is also wonderful. Let's see what we have in black, because black was one of the colors that our rares and mythics were sort of making it look like it would be a good possibility to go into. We have Karen Feeder. Innocent Blood, each player sacrifices a creature. Vampiric Tutor, Animate Dead. This makes me even more want to go into black now. Animate Dead is very, very strong, in my opinion. Once again, whenever I say something is very, very strong, it's in my opinion. My opinion as a fairly casual player. Blight Soil Druid. We got 3 copies of it, and it definitely works with green. So we have Skulking Ghost. What else? We have 3 copies of Skulking Ghost, one of which is a foil. We have Eye Blight Ending, which is good solid removal. I mean, there is a chance that we go up against an elf strategy. However, we got 2 copies of it, a regular and a foil, and it's typically going to remove almost any major threat our opponent has, unless of course they're playing elves, which still I still think it's a solid card to consider keeping in the deck. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 1 card, you lose 1 life. So Phyrexian Rager, we got 2 of those. I noticed this with Shadows of Innistrad. I didn't find the mix to be as strong when it came to what you're getting with your commons and uncommons. I find there'd be a lot of duplicates, which is surprising because we're only opening up 6 packs, but still, it will happen. We have 2 Phyrexian Ragers, not Rangers. We have Wake Dancer, which could be good. We have 2 Gravediggers, including a foil one. We have a Sengir Autocrat. That could be useful for us as well too. And we have Wake of Vultures. So I'm liking our black. I'm liking the black fair amount. Let's see what we have in red. We have Faithless Looting. Firebolt, very strong card. Pyroblast, which more of a sideboard card, but something that could be very strong if we're playing against a blue deck. Reckless Charge, we've got a couple of those. Desperate Ravings. This flashback requires blue, but still, it could be something to use if we're going red-blue at some point, which I don't know if we are. Mog War Marshal. Not bad. I don't think it's bad. We got 2 of those. Young Pyromancer, which is also quite nice. Carbonize. Fervent Cathar, which is useful, very useful. Wildfire Emissary, which is okay. Beetleback Chief, which is very, very good. I wasn't super blown away by a lot of the red, though we did have some good stuff. I mean, the Mog War Marshals, the Beetleback Chiefs, we don't really have much for a straight-up Goblin strategy that I could see. But still, those could be very useful cards. Now let's look at the green, because, once again, black-green seem to be a possibility for where we could go. We have Nimble Mongoose, which I think is very strong, and Commune with the Gods. This could be really good for us. We have 2 Commune of the Gods. Now, Commune of the Gods we could end up using with the Animate Dead. So even if we don't grab a card that if we're stuck with, or not stuck with, if we get 2 cards to come up, one that we want to grab and a creature card that hits the graveyard, we can use Animate Dead to take it out of the graveyard. We have 2 copies of Commune with the Gods. So this is looking more and more like a black-green strategy. Could be quite good. Elvish Vanguard. Let's see how many other elves, because the Deathrite Shaman is an elf as well too. So whenever another elf enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on Elvish Vanguard. Sylvan Might, which is nice, and it's got flashback. Any card with flashback, I really love flashback as a mechanic. What else do we have here? Elf Archer's got Reach and Death Touch. Werebear, another very, very strong card. Elephant Guide, really great. Timberwatch Elf. It's looking more and more. We got 2 of those. Brawn, another great one, especially if even if it hits the graveyard, it's really good. Emperor Crocodile, not bad, especially if we do have a lot of small creatures put out there. Roots, it's okay when certain things. Roar the Worm is really great. Like right now with Commune of the Gods and some of these flashback cards, I think that's going to be very, very good for us to go into black green. I don't know if we want a 3rd color. We could always go with a 3rd color. And then of course we have Green Sun's Zenith. Deathrite Shaman we talked about before. Same thing with Glare of Subdual. Now we do have some dual lands. We have Jungle Hollow, excellent, so that will help us out. Everything else is sort of off color, but if we do want to do a couple colors, we also have a Pilgrim's Eye, which will help us sort of tutor up a land that we want. And then we could either splash for red, and then we'd have green-red fixing. Or we could splash for white, and we'd have white-green fixing. So we do have a lot of options. I'm still leaning towards right now a black-green build. So let's play around with that a bit and see what we can end up with. Okay, so after playing around with the black and green cards, I think I've come out with a fairly solid deck. Now, before I get into what's actually in the deck, let me briefly talk about what I didn't put into the deck, specifically certain elves. Now, I was sure I was going to go with some sort of elf strategy. The reason why is because I have 2 copies of Timberwatch Elf, which is tap. Target creature gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is the number of elves on the battlefield. As well, we have an Elvish Vanguard, which is whenever an elf enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on Elvish Vanguard. Now, in the deck currently, I believe I got 3 elves, one of which is a Blightsoil Druid. So we've also got 2 other copies of Blightsoil Druid, which in my mind, for the Timberwatch Elf and the Elvish Vanguard to really have a good chance of doing major work for us, we would need to put these Blightsoil Druids in, because with just the Elvish Vanguard and the 2 Timberwatch Elves, we're looking at 6 elves in our deck, which isn't horrible, but not enough, I think, to really go with this elf strategy. I could be wrong on that. So if we wanted to really go harder towards the Timberwatch Elvish Vanguard strategy, I think we would need to put in Blightsoil Druid, both of the extra copies, which would give us 3 copies of it in our deck, and I don't think that's very useful for our deck. I'd rather take out the elves and put in some other cards, which I find far more useful. Once again, though, this could be a horrible, horrible mistake. Maybe I'll play around with it. Maybe I'll find that even with the few elves that I have, Timberwatch Elf is super, super solid. That is entirely possible. I don't know for sure. We're going to play with this deck, though, and see how we do. Speaking of this deck, let's talk about what is in the deck. First, obviously, we have the Jungle Hollow, which allows us to tap for either black or green. It comes into play tap, but it gives us 1 life when it comes into play. We have Innocent Blood, which for 1 black, each player sacrifices a creature. Now, that is a downside to us as well, but given what you're going to see in the rest of the deck, which allows us to use stuff in our graveyard, in certain cases we want certain things in our graveyard, we have some threshold stuff, Innocent Blood is not that big of a deal for us to be playing in our deck. We have Vampiric Tutor, which is just going to be hopefully a great card, which gets us just what we need when we need it. It's an instant as well, too, so we can play it on our opponent's end step. perfect for getting that card that we definitely want to draw. Nimble Mongoose, once again, going into that theme of we want stuff in the graveyard and we know we can get stuff in the graveyard. Nimble Mongoose for 1 green is a 1/1 with Shroud. However, when it hits the threshold, which means as long as there are 7 or more cards in our graveyard, it gets +2/+2 as well. We have Deathrite Shaman, which we can cast for either green or black. It allows us to possibly generate mana, which is another thing I forgot to mention. We're only playing with we've got 24 cards in this deck, which means we're only playing with 16 land. Now, that can be a little risky, not super risky. It can be a little risky, but we do have certain mana generators in this deck, so I think we're going to be okay. Anyways, getting back to the Deathrite Shaman, it allows us to possibly generate mana. It allows us to have our opponent lose 2 life. It allows us to gain 2 life. Very good, useful card. Works with both green and black, which is perfect for us. Next up, we have Karen Feeder, which is a 1/1 for 1. It can't block, but you sacrifice a creature and put a 1/1 counter on Karen Feeder. Not the greatest card in the world, but with this deck, once again, we are going to be wanting sometimes to put creatures into our graveyard. We are also having some cards in this deck which will generate tokens for us, fairly cheap, otherwise useless tokens, which for sacrifice purposes will work very, very well, especially with something like Karen Feeder. Next up, we have Animate Dead. Grab anything from any graveyard, put it onto the battlefield under our control. It gets -1, -0. Not much of a downside for a very, very useful card, in my opinion. Blightsoil Druid, not a super great card, but it is something that's going to help us generate a bit of mana, which, given the fact that we're only playing with 16 lands, which, once again, not the end of the world, is going to be quite useful for us. We have 2 copies of Commune with the Gods. This is going to be our engine for us to get Threshold, to get certain cards into our graveyard. We reveal the top 5 cards of our library. We may put a creature or enchantment card from among them into our hand. So we're still getting something out of this deal, and we put the rest into our graveyard. Now, I'm still torn as to whether I do want both copies in this deck, but I think this will be very useful to have the consistency of being able to draw this early. So I am putting both copies in, and we'll see if it works out for us. Next up, we have Sylvan Might, which for 1 and a green, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample until the end of turn. It also has flashback, which means we can play it from the graveyard for its flashback cost. So even if we have to pitch it to the graveyard to something like Commune with the Gods, it still does work for us in our graveyard. Thornweld Archers, so it's a 2/1 with Reach and Death Touch. Could be very, very useful for us. And we have Werebear. Once again, for 1 and a green, it gets us a 1/1 Human Bear Druid, which we can tap for green, once again, helping us out with having just slightly less lands than normal. But it has Threshold, and when it gets Threshold, it has +3/+3. So once again, there's another card that is benefited by us having a lot of cards in our graveyard. Blight's Ending. We decided not to go with an elf strategy, so maybe all of our opponents would decide not to go with an elf strategy. Even if they do go with an elf strategy, chances are there's going to be at least 1 card that this is going to be useful against, so I think it's decent removal to keep in. Phyrexian Rager, when it enters the battlefield, we draw a card and we lose 1 life. I think that's a decent upside. It's a 2/2 for 3, which is not super great, but it's also not the end of the world. Elephant Guide. Enchant creature for 2 and a green. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3. When enchanted creature dies, put a 3/3 green elephant creature token onto the battlefield. That's just good value. I think this is going to be a very strong card, and I'm happy to have a copy of it in this deck. We have Wake Dancer. Now, remember, we have certain things that we're going to require or that we can use to sacrifice other creatures. So even if creatures don't die naturally on a turn, Wake Dancer with Morbid, when enters the battlefield, if a creature died this turn, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield, means that there's a very good chance when we get Wake Dancer, we can cast it for 3 and we're going to get 2 2/2 creatures. We have Gravedigger, so it allows us to take something from the graveyard, like Wake Dancer, for example, that we've used to create a token, or our next card, the Autocrat, and bring it back into our hand and then cast it again. Speaking of our next card, which is Sengir Autocrat, when it enters the battlefield, put 3 0/1 black surf creature tokens onto the battlefield. When it leaves the battlefield, exile all surf tokens. Well, this should be good sacrifice fodder for Innocent Blood and hopefully for something like Carrion Feeder as well. Next up, we have Brawn, which is a 3/3 trampler for 4, but as long as it's in your graveyard and we control forest, which knock on wood we will, creatures you control have trample. So for something like Commune with the Gods, we may not even want to grab Brawn. We may just want it to go directly into our graveyard. So this should be another good card that is useful for us to have in our graveyard. Next up, we have Emperor Crocodile. It's a 5/5 for 4. Unfortunately, it has the stipulation of when you control no other creatures, sacrifice Emperor Crocodile. I'm hoping in this deck that won't be that big of a deal because we do have, like, once again, some token generators, and we have some smaller creatures that I'm guessing will be on the board regardless. So Emperor Crocodile will hopefully, knock on wood, stick around for a while once it hits the board. Next up, we have Roots. Enchant creature without flying. When Roots enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So it's pseudo removal, which is very useful for us. And I was a little bit torn to keep this in, but we do have something like Commune with the Gods, so maybe it's good to have, another enchantment in the deck. I don't know. I think this card's going to be useful for us. Next up, we have Duplicant. It's got Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature. So right way, it's removal. It costs 6. It's normally a 2/4, which is not the greatest. But its ability to exile a non-target creature is super great. And as long as a card exiled with Duplicant is a creature card, Duplicant has the power, toughness, and creature type of the last creature card exiled with Duplicant. It's still a shapeshifter. So that could be very beneficial for us. So as long as that creature is better than a 2/4, we're doing pretty well. And even if it's not better than a 2/4, sometimes it's just better to be able to exile a card or a creature from our opponent's board, or even from our board, though I don't know why we'd want to exile one of our own creatures. Who knows, though? There might be a reason. Next up, we have Roar of the Worm, which for 7, we can put a 6/6 green worm creature token onto the battlefield. However, it has flashback, so for only 4, we can do the exact same thing. So maybe on turn 7, we cast this, next turn we get another 6/6, or more likely, with Commune with the Gods or something like that, we will have this in our graveyard before turn 4. It could happen, and on turn 4 we could get a 6/6 green worm creature token onto the battlefield. And last but not least, Green Sun Zenith. It is X and green, and search your library for a green creature card with converted mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Shuffle Green Sun Zenith into its owner's library. Now originally I wasn't going to put this card in the deck because we don't have a lot of huge green creature threats. Emperor Crocodile is big, but it's also dependent on something else is on the board. So I didn't really think this would be super, super useful. I don't know what I was thinking initially when I was going to cut this from the deck, because yes, we could use it for a Nimble Mongoose, but once we've used it, it goes back into our library. So it's possible that it comes up again and we can tutor up another green creature. So even though we don't have like massive green creatures, like the largest one is the Emperor Crocodile, which does have a downside. Next up, we have Brawn as far as our green creatures go. It's still useful because we can use it over and over again, and it will allow us to grab sometimes the right creature for the right job, like say something like the Archer here if we have a flyer that's causing us problems. So there we go. That was a lot of talking. My voice is already pretty trashed. I'm probably going to lose it by the time we play our first match, but still, that is our deck. 13 creatures, 11 non-creature spells, and we're going to quickly add the lands. I think we'll add that to the deck. That seems like an okay mix. So here we are, our 40-card sealed league deck. So given with all the yapping I was doing, I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I'm going to put this in its own separate part, the actual deck building video. The next part you're going to see is going to be match 1. I'm hoping to have also match 2 up on the same day, so there should be 3 videos for you to watch, including the deck building and 2 matches. The last 3 matches for this league, I may wait till the following Monday just so maybe I can get some feedback from you guys. If you want, leave some comments in the comments section. Let me know if I'm completely missing a deck that would be far better in the league that I'm just not seeing. Maybe black-green is not the way to go. Maybe you saw something with the blue and white or red cards that I'm crazy for not trying. Please let me know in the comments section below, and I will definitely take whatever advice or suggestions you have under advisement. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. As I mentioned before, if you have any questions or comments or advice, please leave that in the comments section below. You can also follow us or contact us directly on Twitter. It is @BrainPulpTV, or you can follow or contact me directly on Twitter @GeekTragedy. In the meantime, though, take care, everyone. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. It means a lot to us, and I'll see you all very soon.